Good morning and welcome. It's an all-new episode of Hatching for Health. Today we're going to be joined by KAYDEN COLEMAN, and we are going to learn a little bit more about cisgender and transgender. So let's welcome to the show. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, good. I like your shirt. I'm going to give you a little hug.
Thank you.
Yeah, take a seat. Got you some water there as well.
Yes, I appreciate it.
So thanks for joining us. Big fan of your socials. You do a lot to just share with the community, about your life, and like a lot of us do. Yours is a little more interesting with your two little daughters. There's a lot going on, right?
A lot, yes, a whole lot.
But most importantly, I think a lot of what you do is like provide education to the public that, on subjects that sometimes are more sensitive to talk about.
Yes.
And so I'm here to talk about them.
Yes, let's do it.
So tell me, so you currently have been transitioning, I guess is the term that you use for what you call 14 years?
14 years,
okay.
Yes.
And so bring me back 14 years ago in your life and
Okay.
kind of where you had this, moment of feelings and what made things change.
Actually, believe it or not, I've only been medically transitioning for 14 years.
Okay.
I've been transitioning as a whole, which socially transitioning for about 16 years or so. And truth be told, back in like 2006 or 7, I knew I wanted to transition, but there just wasn't much information out there.
Yeah.
When you looked up things like testosterone and hormones, all you found was like this gray market stuff in India somewhere, which was very daunting for me. But I did buy my first chest binder at that time. But I was just so afraid of like what my family was going to think and whether or not they were going to disown me. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to try to, live my best life.
Yeah. And what age was that?
Oh, gosh. How old am I now? I'm 36. I was about 22, 21,
Okay.
21-ish,
Okay.
I believe. And then it was a few years later, I just fell into this like depression. It was just bad. I didn't want to leave the house. I didn't want to do anything. And I had to come to terms with the fact that me presenting as like a masculine woman just wasn't enough for me. I wasn't feeling happy.
Okay.
So at the time I was living right outside of DC in Maryland, and I packed up and moved down to Atlanta, where my best friend was. I actually helped him with his transition. And
was that like him wanting to transition was prior to you kind of figuring that out
it
yourself?
was right after I kind of did my
Okay.
research, and so he came to me like, hey, I'm wanting to transition. So we kind of figured it out with each other.
Okay.
So I wanted that kind of like camaraderie of, like community. And so I was like, I'm going to move down there. And I started living with him. And I started, doing the things that I needed to do to start medically transitioning.
Okay. And so at this point, you're in your like early 20s.
Yes.
Okay. And so, I mean, as a kid growing up, so you were, born as it relates to when you talked about that, when, you're born, you're identified as a female.
Yes.
And, you're going through elementary and middle school, and you've got, friends. Like, was there any time where you were just like, more attracted to like one sex versus the other? None of that really came about till you were like basically more of an adult.
Yeah. I actually was always attracted to boys.
Okay.
And then it's going to sound crazy, but somewhere in high school, this story is always hilarious to me because I always dressed like a tomboy.
Okay.
Always. My mother really had to fight me into skirts and things of that nature. And it was at lunchtime, and this girl goes, "Are you gay?" And I was like, "No, I'm not gay." She was like, "Well, you should be." And I was like, "Am I gay?"
Yeah.
Because all I saw was when you saw masculine presenting women,
Yeah.
they dated women. So I dated women for like 10 years, thinking that
Okay.
that's what I was supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
Not understanding why I couldn't stay faithful or I wasn't happy in the relationships. They were always super tumultuous.
Okay. So you were
yeah.
actually, you preferred like, you were attracted to men, but you preferred women to date women as, as what you would consider at the time a woman.
Yes.
And presenting that
yes.
way.
And I did not feel comfortable dating men when they saw me as a woman. It was very uncomfortable for me. Yeah. I know it's complex.
Yeah, no, it is. It is, but it's interesting to, to understand like, what goes through people's head.
Yes.
Because that's kind of why you began to just feel like unhappy, and you know
Yes,
what I mean? It
exactly.
was like there was something missing. It's like I'm attracted to this, but I'm not
Mhm.
comfortable dating that
Mhm.
as a woman, you know.
Mhm.
And so obviously, like you said, there was a point where, you know, in the 20s, you were
Yeah.
like, okay, I'm going to figure this out.
Yes.
And things have changed a lot from then to now,
A lot.
as far as like what you find on the internet, and you
Mhm.
know, and I feel like things are more accepted now and understood, so they are accepted versus, you know, the latter.
Yes.
As how things were before.
Mhm.
And so you consider myself cisgender and you transgender.
Correct.
Just for the simple fact that what we were born identified as has changed now.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
Kind of like
so right.
transitioning.
So cis, CIS, that prefix, it's a Latin prefix. It means on the side of, and trans means on the other side. So we use cisgender and transgender just as a way, again, these are adjectives, just as a way to differentiate trans people from cisgender people. Because if you say stuff like, I'm a real woman, you're insinuating that trans women aren't real women.
Yeah.
And
like,
they are. Trans
yeah.
women are real women. They're just transgender women. That's the type of woman that they are. So when we're having those conversations, instead of saying like biological and natural and real, cisgender, transgender, those are actually, cisgender is actually a scientific term.
Okay.
A lot of people think it's something that we trans people made up. It's not.
Yeah.
It's been being used for years. I believe it started in around 92, which doesn't sound long, but if you think about it, we're in 2023.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a long,
It
you know,
is.
a long time ago.
It's like over 30 years.
Exactly.
Yeah, it is a long time. So to my knowledge, or I guess to the lack thereof, you know, when I hear that term, I typically think that, you know, it's a man and goes and gets all these all these changes surgically, and they become a woman, or a woman goes and gets all these changes and becomes a man. But that's not what it is at all, or completely.
Yes, it can be, but transgender is an umbrella term. And under that umbrella are a bunch of different gender identities. From, again, trans man, trans woman, two-spirited, non-binary, genderqueer. There's so many different gender identities. And so there's not just trans men and trans women, but even in the vein of trans men and trans women, there's no linear way to transition, right? Okay. So everybody always thinks, well, when will you get the full transition? That's one of the biggest questions I get. And I'm like, what's the full transition?
Yeah.
I don't comprehend, because people automatically, when they think of trans people, the first thing they do is think of our body parts. Oh, so did you get bottom surgery yet? And I'm like, why? First of all, why? Do you really walk up to people in strange places that you don't know and start questioning them about their body parts? Probably not. Yeah. But when somebody's openly trans, people feel that way. But there are trans people that will never take hormones for whatever reason, personal reasons, religious reasons, health reasons. There's a ton of reasons. Same with surgeries. That doesn't make their identities any less. A man who hasn't transitioned or begun transition or will never transition is still a transgender man. Okay.
And the only way, like, for somebody to know that, you know, is basically not, you know, in that position, is born what they were and decided to stay that way, would be like, for example, how would I know? Is it simply the fact that you would physically always, you know, present as like, I'm a man, you know what I mean? Like, versus like, for example, I have a close friend, and even though he is going to do the surgery, say he did it, I mean, if he didn't grow hair or put a wig on, I wouldn't be like, you're representing yourself as a female. So that part of it is kind of sometimes the only thing you guys would, I guess you would individually do. Like, for example,
not necessarily.
Like I look at you as just like a handsome man, right?
Oh, well, thank you.
I look at, you know, but like if you threw a wig on, you know, you'd be a beautiful woman. So like for me,
I still kind of look like a man with a wig on. Trust me, I did it for Halloween. It wasn't pretty.
But like I guess from like, just say from like, you know, from the neck up, is that something that we can at least be able to confirm, like, you know, what you want to be, you know, known as?
As much as I would want to say yes, it's just not that cut and dry.
Okay.
We have to understand that the ideas of masculine presenting and feminine presenting, they're all social constructs. And what identifies men and women vary from culture to culture. And a lot of where misgendering comes from is assuming someone's gender. Okay. So the best way to know how to identify somebody is to ask.
Okay.
Literally, people are afraid to ask people's pronouns. What are your pronouns? Hi, my name is such and such. My pronouns are yada, yada, yada. What are yours? Some people will look at you like you have 10 heads because obviously I'm a man, obviously I'm a woman. And that's your privilege and I get that, but it's not as obvious for everyone else.
Okay, because that, that part usually is like, would be like the strong, like, for us to know, right?
Yes, exactly.
Versus, obviously, I'm not going to say, like, do you have breasts?
Right, exactly, because you can't, right.
So that's why I was like, will that be able to, like, identify, like, if, if I were to meet someone and not know, now it's like, it's kind of, so it really, ultimately, it can be confusing, like, no matter what way you look at it, because,
It can be, and it's not just cisgender people, there are trans people who we slip up too. Like, it's not, I think people feel like they have to walk on eggshells. The truth is, there are people that will use she, her pronouns that look like me. And if you saw me out on the street, the first thing you would say is, sir. I know that because I live it every day, right? So, and there's times when I assume people's gender as a trans person, as a trans educator. It's just something that happens because it's ingrained in us. This is something that we are taught as soon as a baby is born, when depending on what genitals they have, that determines what color they're going to wear and basically the trajectory of their life, right? So it's hard to unlearn. It's hard to get away from, but learning to at least ask for pronouns and things and trying to use gender neutral terms when referring to people. If you don't know what they're, there are people that are super androgynous. What do you call them? Usually people are like, I'm not going to use they, them for one person. We do it all the time.
Yeah.
Hey, have you seen the plumber? Oh, I think they went down the street. I'm still talking about one person, right?
Exactly.
So using those gender neutral pronouns is kind of a safe space as well. When I don't know somebody's gender identity, I try to default automatically to gender neutral.
Yeah.
And then you ask. Or somebody, if you're using gender neutral, they'll be like, oh no, it's she, her, you're fine. Or, so something like that, right?
Exactly. So, so tell me, so when you were in your 20s, when did you meet the significant other that you ended up having your two precious daughters with?
Oh, they got two different daddies.
Okay, so it was two different daddies.
Yeah,
okay.
So I met my ex-husband in 2011.
Okay.
2011 is when I met him, and
you were already transgender at that point.
Yeah, I was already transitioning. He met me like this. I mean, my beard wasn't as luxurious. I also wasn't bald, but he met me like this. He is a gay man, so and I found out I was pregnant in 2013. And I actually, with my first pregnancy, I didn't know I was pregnant until I was 5.5 months pregnant. So that was fun.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that's a whole nother story within itself.
But with your first, like, it takes a while to kind of pop, you know what I mean?
I was popped.
Okay.
I was popped. Okay. I kept telling my ex-husband, I was like,
I'm gaining weight.
I'm getting fat. And of course, what did he do? He lied. No, you're not. No, you're not. I was. I definitely was. So I had just had top surgery. I had top surgery in March of 2013.
Okay.
And I was required to stop taking my hormones. And shortly after that is when I conceived. But there's this untrue thing that a lot of doctors tell us trans masculine people who start testosterone, that testosterone will render us infertile. So a lot of us feel like we can't have babies. We can. I'm living proof. And so that's why I didn't know, because nobody thought to, including myself, to give me but despite when you look at, hindsight, I had the symptoms. I was lethargic. I was tired. I'm gaining weight. Appetite's growing. Had to pee all the time. Yeah.
Suppress the sperm, like testosterone, like meaning, you might not have that much, of it. And sometimes they'll put people on like something like HCG. I know this because my husband personally, like, at one point in his life, testosterone was something he was doing, and then it was like, oh, I want to have kids. And we're like, so yes, like that is probably like a notion that people just assume they won't get pregnant,
right?
If they're on that or have taken that,
right. And that's with all.
And it happened to you.
Yeah. There's with all hormones, there's a loophole,
right?
So trans men, we take testosterone. Trans women take estradiol. which is, synthetic version of estrogen. And people are like, they think that those hormones were made for us. And like you mentioned, actually, those things were made for cisgender people. It just works for trans people as well. But it doesn't necessarily render you infertile because everybody's body reacts to all different kinds of things differently. And I've been, again, transitioning for 14 years, and I have 2 kids, and I have a 2-year-old. So that tells you all these years of me taking testosterone did not render me infertile.
Well, yes, and now that you just said that again and put it in perspective, so did your partner at the time, did he take any kind of testosterone? Okay, because I'm thinking more from the perspective of my husband. Then there was like the lack of sperm, but or ejaculation was there, but then there wasn't as much sperm in it because of testosterone, being taken for however long.
Yes.
And so with a woman taking it, then it obviously did not, for any reason have you not have 2 baby girls, so it's like,
right.
Exactly. So I want to continue on and learn more about, this first daughter and then daughter number 2. We do need to take a quick commercial break. So we will be right back with you after this quick break. Infinity Skincare is dedicated to making you look and feel your best. If you look good on the outside, you're going to feel good on the inside. Located in the River Oaks and Woodlands area, Infinity Med Spa is devoted to skincare, anti-aging, and rejuvenation. Our treatment options will help you look and feel your absolute best. The primary difference between a med spa and a day spa is that the estheticians at a med spa work under the directives of physicians and are able to offer a much more extensive list of services than they would be able to offer at a day spa. Your day at Infinity Med Spa can vary, depending on whether your focus is more directed towards treatments focused on relaxation, or whether your focus is more directed towards an outer rejuvenation. Here at Infinity Med Spa, we believe good health is a combination of inner health and outer beauty. When you look good on the outside, you feel good on the inside. If you're interested in learning more about the med spa services offered here at Infinity Med Spa, you can visit our website at medspainfinity.com. Imagine hearing the news as a parent that your child has been diagnosed with a condition that is degenerative or life-threatening. Now imagine being told that there's little to no research for that condition, making it so difficult to even figure out the next steps. The reality is, for so many rare conditions, just finding specialists who understand the condition and being able to make informed treatment decisions for their child is very challenging. Each episode, with the help of my network of physicians and medical resources across the U.S., I will attempt to connect the dots by bringing recognition of rare conditions and connecting families to the best treatment, clinical experts, resources, and support. I'm going to highlight these hard-to-diagnose diseases and offer in-depth awareness for families of children in the rare disease community. I believe we are all in charge of our own healthcare, and pushing for answers and creating awareness for various rare health conditions can really make the world a better place. Not only am I a huge advocate who seeks to spearhead the fight to bring rare conditions to the forefront of research, but I personally had my own rare condition, and thankfully I was cured due to early detection. My passion to help others was fueled by that experience, and it's motivated me to create the Hatching for Health show. This show gives us the opportunity to create awareness for children with hopes of finding them cures. Welcome back from the break. If you have just joined us, we are here with Kayden Coleman, and we are learning all about his journey as a transgender male and about the 2 beautiful daughters that he has. So before we took the break, we were talking about, what are your girls' names?
Azalea is my 9-year-old, and Journey is my 2-year-old.
Okay. Oh, okay. So sweet. And so, your first child, you said, was with a different partner. And so how did that, kind of not turn out to be your forever partner?
Things just are things. Sometimes you realize that you should have been friends. That's basically where it was.
Yeah.
You realize that you should be friends. We get along great now.
That's good.
And are co-parenting. My oldest daughter actually lives in New Jersey with him full time, and I get her during the summer. hopefully that'll change soon.
Yeah.
But that's where we're at right now.
Okay.
I ended up moving here to Houston. I've been here a little over 2 years now. We moved because of COVID.
Okay.
And my 2-year-old, she was a preemie. She was born a month early. And
Really?
yeah, and New York is so on top of each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just so paranoid about
Yeah, with
COVID,
a
and
child.
I
Yeah.
dodged COVID until like a month ago, honestly.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Wow.
So
Good for you.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I was worried about that, and I
Mm-hmm.
obviously couldn't take my 9-year-old because she has school and roots and all that
Of
there.
course. Yeah.
And also, New York is just not affordable.
Yeah. It's
So we moved here to Houston, and I love it here. But it was more for her health,
for
and
her.
yeah.
Okay.
Hmm.
So take me back whenever you were pregnant with, your first daughter,
Mhm.
and you had basically had the surgery to remove your breast. So at that point, you had more like tissue of a male at that. Were you
Mhm.
able to like breastfeed
Breastfeed,
still?
no.
Okay.
Mm-mm.
So that does take away that.
Yes and no.
Okay.
There are people who are medical anomalies.
Mm-hmm.
So when you do any type, even with breast reductions and things,
Mm-hmm.
that can destroy your milk ducts, right?
Okay.
However, what I had is called a double mastectomy with nipple grafts. So basically, they remove pretty much all of that fat and tissue
Okay.
and slice off your nipple, reposition it,
Really?
all that good stuff. Which means your milk ducts are basically
Are
just
gone.
destroyed.
Okay.
But there are people whose bodies somehow
Mm-hmm.
reformulate those milk ducts. And do they
Perform the same before.
no, they only can produce colostrum,
Okay.
which is like the golden
Yeah.
stuff, but it's not enough to like sustain, but it
Okay.
is enough to do like supplemental
Okay.
feeding. But that happens very few and far between.
So let me ask you this: had you known that you were gonna get pregnant with 1, 2 little girls,
I
would
still
you
would have gotten
had
top
you
surgery.
still would have done
Yes.
the top surgery? Okay.
Absolutely.
Because I know some people are like,
There are
I
some.
have to breastfeed, like
Mhm.
the nutrients, like it's
Mhm.
like, but and even some that have their breasts and want to breastfeed can't because the baby won't latch or they don't
Exactly.
produce enough. So
Mhm.
there's obviously those outcomes too that
Yeah.
are not ideal for them, but it happens. Okay, but that wouldn't have changed things
No, not for me.
for you.
Not for me. No,
Okay.
absolutely not. That was my chest was pretty much one of the only things that I had dysphoria about.
Mm-hmm.
So I needed that gone.
Okay.
I
Were
needed
you
that gone.
pretty like big breasted?
Yeah.
Really?
Mhm.
Okay.
And I had to wear a chest binder, which meant it was very uncomfortable, in
Yeah.
order for me to feel comfortable in just life.
Yeah.
It was super uncomfortable, and I couldn't wait. I couldn't wait.
Yeah.
I would never go back, ever.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so as far as like currently you're attracted to, men.
Mostly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And are they, I guess, I don't know if y'all use the term straight men like I would, or would,
Yeah.
or trans men, like a transgender man.
I like men.
Okay.
Men. Trans men are men.
Okay.
So I date trans men,
Yeah.
cisgender men. They obviously would need to be gay or bisexual or pansexual. I
Okay.
don't know any straight men who would be interested in me. I don't think they would be straight.
Okay.
So.
But they need to still like, basically be a male down there. If they were, for example.
No.
Okay. So they could be exactly what you've done in life, like transition, but, only did a partial.
They don't have to have had, if you're male identified.
Okay.
And I'm attracted to you,
Then
you're
that's-
in the running. It doesn't
okay.
matter. I respect everybody
Yeah.
who identifies as male. You never have to have touched
They
a
don't have to be able to get you
hormone or
pregnant.
anything. No, absolutely. I'm not doing that anyway.
Right?
I would
It's
never
like-
have another kid. I'm good.
It's like, because that, I mean, well, in a lot of ways, obviously that makes, somebody, obviously, if that's an option, then it, makes somebody not an option for you, if that is something that you're, wanting. And,
Yeah, I get that, but no.
Okay.
I'm good. I'm
You're
good
with
on
it
that.
too.
Yeah.
So currently, are you in a relationship?
No, I am single.
Okay. So the 2-year-old, are you co-parenting with that one?
Co-parenting, yes.
Okay. And they're here locally?
Yes.
Mhm. Okay, that's good. So you
Yeah.
have help with that one, and then you
Yes.
get to see your 9-year-old
Exactly.
in the summers and are working on maybe. Would you want to take on full custody if you were able?
Yes. It's something I'm definitely open to.
Mm-hmm.
I would want it to be more her choice.
Okay.
But I'm trying to convince her other dad to move at least down south.
Okay.
so that we could have, it's easier.
Be a little closer. Yeah.
Yes.
And you obviously have a big presence on social media and TikTok. Do you, use that and make a living out of it, or do you have like other lines of work that you do?
Yes. But also I am an educator.
Okay.
So I've taught workshops for Harvard, Duke,
Amazing.
UNC, Old Dominion University. I do keynote speaking. I do
wonderful.
consulting for different organizations and companies. I do diversity, equity, inclusion training. So.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. And did you do that prior to moving to Houston as well?
I actually started right around when I got here, because we moved here when Journey was about 3 months.
Okay.
So I had just given birth. And my platform grew exponentially. And I was like, how can I, what's the best use I can make out of this? And I was like, I thought about all the trauma that I went through medically, giving birth both times, and how it hasn't really changed.
Yeah.
And I was like, how can I make this better?
Yeah.
And I thought education was the best way. And there are transgender people who are doing this, but I thought it was important to have a Black trans person doing it, because our experience is different. And that's important to point out.
And when you say different, so tell me exactly what you mean by that versus transgender, like American or Latino or other cultures.
Basically, even when you think about women, Black women, like in maternal spaces, Black women are more likely to die or experience trauma or neglect. This is statistically factual.
Yeah.
When you add that extra intersection of being trans, you can only imagine.
Yeah.
So there's just a lot of things that are systemically in place that are harmful to Black people in medical spaces. I mean, just generally, but specifically when we're talking about in medical spaces, there's just a lot of discrimination and things, lack of access to pain medicine or funds to even have equitable care. There's just so many different things systemically in place that are barriers for us.
Really?
And again, when you add that layer of being trans, it's just another barrier for us.
Really, really. And so, for example, just a family practitioner or like a primary care doctor, are you, I guess, kind of implying that they are sometimes just they don't treat the same as like someone that doesn't identify as transgender, like in relation to like
Absolutely.
physicals and like what they need, like you said, like a prescription or things like that?
Yes. There's been plenty of times when I've walked into spaces needing medical care for one thing, and the entire appointment was centered around me being trans, and I never got to the medical thing that I wanted to get to, right? There's been spaces where maybe I needed pain management, pain medicine. I wouldn't be prescribed what I probably should have been prescribed, because there are a lot of people that believe, and this is not just like a myth, there are a lot of medical providers that believe that Black people have a higher tolerance for pain, so we don't need as much pain meds. Or they assume that we're going to take these meds and sell them or abuse them. So we get ibuprofen, whereas somebody else might have gotten, I don't know, Percocet, things of that nature. And this is not just my experience. These are a lot of people experiencing, especially on the lower income side. It's what we experience a lot.
Yeah. So a lot of your, like when you're speaking and kind of educating people, I mean, it's basically, that's part of it too. Like kind of just having that as an open discussion and like, for those changes to potentially be made, because it's all about, bringing it up and putting it out there so that people can understand, like, why would that be, and making sure that doesn't continue, right? Because it's like everybody should be, treated equal. Speaking of that, what does your shirt say? So,
it says equality.
Okay.
And it basically just has like the definition
of
it.
equality.
Yes.
I love it.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I've really enjoyed having you on.
Thank you.
Where can people find you if they want to ask questions or just follow all the education you're providing?
Definitely. Instagram is KAYDEN Official, and TikTok, which is what I'm addicted to right now, is KAYDEN Coleman.
Okay, I love it. I know you do a fabulous job on TikTok, and
thank you.
Yeah, and educating, and and just the energy. So nice to meet you.
It was
and
nice
we'll
to meet you
definitely
too.
stay in touch.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for tuning in to a new episode of Hatching for Health. We hope that you learned something, and if you want to get in touch with him, you can find him on Instagram or TikTok. Thank you so much. We'll see you right back here next Saturday.